What is generative artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence basically is based on human thinking behavior and on the basis of the identification of the patterns of human brain, how the human thinks, how the human makes judgment, how the humans process information before taking any decision. All these patterns are identified and learned by the machines, and then the machines perform different tasks that were being performed by the individuals or humans before, and those tasks include the simple tasks or day-to-day tasks to the complex task which requires significant data analysis and judgment. Now, generative artificial intelligence is basically the type of the artificial intelligence where the user inputs the relevant data to the AI bots or AI system, and then the AI bots identify the input data, identify the data patterns and the demographics or the objects provided to the AI tools or AI bot, and then on the basis of the processing and the previous learning behavior on the basis of which AI bots are made available or are learned, then generative AI gives the desired output to the user. When we talk about the input data that is provided to the artificial intelligence bot, the data might be the text data, which includes long form documents or long form narratives, or you can say long form text written on any specific topic, or the input data might be the images, or the input data might also be the audio clips or the audio files, and the synthetic data that is made available in the financial systems. Then input data can be of any type. So there are different risks that are associated with using the GAI in the financial institutions or in any organization, because the capability of GAI or generative artificial intelligence to provide output is not as much accurate as it should be, and there are chances of errors, and the output is basically also dependent on the quality of the input data provided to the AI bots or AI system. So GAI is used in the fintechs, digital banks, e-commerce businesses, internet marketing, medical fields, etc. So let's discuss what are the top six predicted GAI adoption risks, which means if an organization adopts the generative AI and totally relies on it, or you can say totally relies on the output provided by the generative AI, then the organization may face these top six risks, which must be identified, and appropriate controls then should be developed by the management to mitigate these risks. So the number one is the cybersecurity risk, and it includes the phishing email or the cyber stalking, where the internal people or the management or the human resource of the organization is contacted by the criminals online, and the criminals might convince the organization's employees to perform different criminal activities like opening of the fake accounts or gaining access to the confidential data and so on. So, generative AI carries the risk of cybersecurity because the AI bots can easily scan the data and can negate the applicable rules to protect the systems and data of the organization. Therefore, management or the banks should consider implementing appropriate internal controls to avoid the risk of cybersecurity that is increased through the use of generative AI. And the AI bots should be controlled by the management, and the appropriate robust parameters should be defined around so that the AI bots cannot manipulate the data themselves. As we discussed that AI can manipulate the data, and if the data is manipulated either through the error by the AI or through the inappropriate control of the AI bots, then the privacy risk arises, And if the data is lost, if the confidential data like the customer's data is lost, then the regulators impose significant fines and penalties, because there are different significant types of data protection laws and regulations around the world, and institutions are required to comply with those laws and regulations. Further, the output or the outcomes provided by the generative AI might be inaccurate, like, for example, inaccurate profiling of the customers made on the basis of the input data. If the data input by the user is not correct or inappropriate, then the GAI outcomes would also be inaccurate. And if the management relies on that outcome, then you can imagine what will happen. The customer risk profile would be wrong, and on the basis of that wrong profiling, customer would be provided different transaction threshold limits, or you can say, and the customer might easily perform different fraudulent activities if the wrong or inaccurate profiling of the customer is made by the generative AI. Further, GAI imposes the operational risk to the management, because there is usually the lack of availability of the talent or human resource that is experienced enough to understand the AI bots, how the bots work, how the bots are trained, and what type of data are to be made available to the bots for data analysis and to provide the relevant outcomes. So the specialist or AI specialists are not easily available these days, and therefore organizations cannot totally rely on the generative AI outcomes or its uses. Further, loss of intellectual property is also another risk posed by the GAI, because the intangible assets like the software use rights may be granted to unauthorized person, which means the lack of control by the organization on its own intangible assets. So, to prevent this risk, the management needs to ensure that the AI bots are controlled and managed, to ensure that the internal confidential software and the data available in those systems and softwares are not provided or given access to any unauthorized person, either in the organization or outside the organization. So, this is another risk which is with the adoption of generative AI. Further, if the organization or management relies on the generative AI, then the management may face a different regulatory compliance risk, because on the basis of wrong input data, there are chances that fake accounts are opened, or the fake data provided by the customers are not appropriately identified and verified by the generative AI, because the AI was not based on the identification of the parameters where the account authentication should be performed. So, if the data input or the parameters behind the AI bots are not appropriate, then there is the possibility that the fake customer accounts would be opened, and the fake customer onboarding would result in different criminal activities such as money laundering or terrorist financing or digital frauds, etc. So, so these were the top six predicted GAI adoption risks. And when the organization is going to adopt the generative artificial intelligence in internal processes and systems, the management must ensure that appropriate talent or appropriate AI specialists are made available to learn the data, to provide the relevant input data to the AI, and on the basis of that, the relevant decisions are made, and to on the basis of which the organization may be able to prevent these broader categories of top risks.